If there's one thing that a lot of fans had a lot of criticism over with The Rise of Skywalker, it had a lot to do with Palpatine's return and exactly how Disney utilized this in the Star Wars universe and of course in the overall canon and lore. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you are new to the channel for future Star Wars updates. Also, by the way guys, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you also very much for the kind support. It is greatly appreciated. Now, one thing about Episode 9 that a lot of fans, believe it or not, had a lot of problems with was exactly how Palpatine returned and exactly how Palpatine's son was put into the actual movie. And unfortunately, a lot of it had to do with the fact that you had to read a book to learn all about this stuff. It wasn't necessarily exactly how he came back, but it was how he came back without an explanation in the actual movie. I mean, I know so many casual fans that really aren't heavily into Star Wars, and I know a lot of which who are very much hardcore fans. And the casual fans were very confused as to what in the world was going on, how was Palpatine alive. A lot of people were thinking that he never really died, and that it was his original body, where in reality, if you guys read the novelization of Episode 9, Palpatine is indeed a clone. Now, with that being said, what's even all the more interesting is exactly what Lucas is up to right now with the Disney executives to course correct some of the current canon lore for the sequel trilogy and exactly how a lot of it is going to actually have a major impact, not just on Palpatine and Palpatine Son, but also something major to do with the very end of Episode 9 specifically. So, with that being said, of course, what's even all the more exciting about all of these efforts by Lucas is that with creator George Lucas helping both Favreau and Filoni around the clock for this new Star Wars TV shows, of course, and these new projects in the works for the roadmap, Lucas is also heavily involved in upcoming shows like Underworld and even The Mandalorian Season 4. However, it's noted that George recently convinced Disney to do something substantial in the Star Wars franchise. Now, it's noted that Lucas is erasing a big piece in Star Wars canon by Disney since he has not been impressed with how The Rise of Skywalker was handled. Now, it's noted that Lucas is currently helping Favreau and Filoni to rewrite the canon of Palpatine and his son, Dathan Palpatine, and that they are planning to completely erase the storyline that Dathan Palpatine was a son of Sidious through gene splicing. Now, Lucas is now in the works to create canon that Palpatine actually had a legitimate child with somebody that Palpatine knew for a very long time in the Star Wars franchise that will be unveiled sometime at the very end of next year. This is so that Lucas can follow what was done in Star Wars Legends, except in a slightly different way. Lucas is currently making a canon under Disney that Palpatine had a child with somebody, and not through some scientific experiment through gene splicing done by the Sith cultists on Exegol. So, I want to pause here quickly before I get to the more involved stuff of what Lucas is doing. Now, obviously, a lot of fans had quite a number of issues with how Palpatine had a son in Episode 9, and not only was it never explained that you had to read a book also for that, but that also just the way it was done, right? Now, if you guys know about Star Wars Legends, Palpatine does have a son. He's called Triclops. I know, very odd name. But in the current canon, Palpatine's son is simply named Dathan. Alright, D-A-T-H-O-N. And this was all made canon, by the way, in the Shadows of the Sith book. We'll talk about that in a second. But George is also going to be erasing his name and giving him a brand new name in the upcoming canon for Star Wars. And of course, there's always an easy way to retcon that. It could easily be that Dathan Palpatine was just a cover name. It could be something as simple as that, just like what they're doing with Rey. Now, the thing about Palpatine's bloodline is that George Lucas realizes that the Palpatine bloodline is very important to him. I mean, let's not forget that it's George who created the character, it's George who approved all of the legend stories about Palpatine's, family actually expanding, throughout the ages. I mean, there's a lot of descendants of Palpatine at one point in time. We'll talk about that a little bit in a second. But obviously, it really is going to be a very detailed process, a very, lengthy process to get this whole thing rolling. They want to make this all canon, by the way, by the end of 2023, to really kind of just get it out there to the fans, to make it canon that Palpatine had a legitimate son instead of one through gene splicing. Moving on. Now, additionally, Lucas is discarded to rename Palpatine Son, since he does not like the name Dathan at all, that was made canon in Shadows of the Sith book that released back in June. This is something that, at no surprise, Kathleen Kennedy is very unhappy about with Lucas, and is not supporting this idea at all. Now, this is set to be all made canon sometime by the end of 2023, that will be known to all fans by then exactly how this happens. Now, I don't know if you guys know about Star Wars Legends, but in Legends, Palpatine does actually have a child with somebody, and that specific somebody is a very interesting character in the Star Wars world. Now, when we look at everything related to that, there was a connection between, of course, Palpatine and one of the characters known as Sly Moore. Alright, so we've been talking about this before in the past. They're not going to be doing that per se, apparently, but they are going to be doing something similar and familiar to that. Now, obviously, George is really trying to just adjust things and make it all the more accurate to Star Wars Legends in order to really create a true Palpatine descendant. They want to make sure that they can create a more interesting story to that. And that was the one thing that I think Episode 9 had a lot of problems with, was that they never really shed a lot of light on Palpatine's son, or just Rey's parents in general. It wasn't really that big of a focus, when in reality, they were very important. If you guys read the Shadows of the Sith book, and if you guys read, all the other chapters in that book, it kind of goes over Rey's childhood and such, but I digress. The thing about this is that Lucas is really trying to do exactly what was done in Legends, to expand the Palpatine bloodline, and to also expand the Skywalker bloodline. That's what they're also doing. So there's a lot of work being done here. At the end of the day, given that Favreau and Filoni are working with Lucas on all these major retcons that are going to change how we view Episode 9, how we view Palpatine and his son Dathan, who is also going to be renamed. And by the way, about the name Dathan, it just seems so bland, it sounds boring. I don't know why they chose that name in the book. Again, it could just be a cover name, easy as that, as a retcon. But Dathan Palpatine, it just sounds very flat. And I will agree, even in Legends, Triclops, it was a very odd and strange name. So they're gonna have to come up with something, even all the more interesting. We already know that Dathan had a code name called Maximus Palpatine that was going to be slated for the Shadows of the Sith book. That eventually turned out to be Dathan in the finalization of the book. So Maximus was a placeholder. Honestly, Maximus sounds like a Palpatine bloodline name, if you think about it. At least to me it does. I don't know about you guys. But anyways, let me know what you guys have to say about all of this below in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.